Hello everybody, Jeremy Dickinson here. Thank you for watching. In this video, I want to spend some time talking about the pro-life position in abortion. I've talked about the pro-choice position in other videos. In this video, I'm going to talk about the pro-life position. I'm going to do so by way of thinking about an influential paper by Marquis called Why Abortion is Immoral. Okay, the title gives away the view. The pro-life position is a position that abortion is generally wrong, if not always wrong. The pro-choice position, as we know, is a position that abortion is generally, if not in a wide range of cases, not always, if not always, permissible. The relevant senses of permissibility or of wrongness or of impermissibility, right, are ethical or moral, as opposed to legal. I'm assuming that we can pull apart the ethical and the moral from each other in thinking about this issue. So Marquis argues for the pro-life position. Abortion is generally wrong, though on his view it isn't always wrong, just generally is. In this way, he's a kind of moderate pro-lifer, as opposed to an extreme one. Marquis is not motivated by religious considerations, so he claims not to have a religious bone in his body. He claims that he was driven to this moderate pro-life position by thinking about abstract things like the wrongness of killing. And he ends up concluding that the wrongness of killing applies to fetuses. And we'll see how that argument goes in a bit. Let me see if I can do a bit of stage setting. Marquis thinks that there's a bit of stalemate in the abortion debate. On the one hand, you have those sanctity of human life theorists, those who argue that human life is a sacred thing, and given the sacredness, it confers the right to life on those who enjoy status as human beings. Well, of course, fetuses are human beings, so fetuses enjoy the right to life. What Marquis argues is that this argument, this pro-life argument, based on the sanctity of human life, it fails because it ends up proving too much. Okay, it ends up being too permissive. How so? Well, if all human life is sacred, then human cancer cells are sacred too. And now it looks like we'd have to confer the right to life on human cancer cells. That's a terrible result. So that's the problem with the sanctity of human life type arguments for abortion, for the impermissibility of abortion, excuse me. So here's what's significant here. Marquis is saying that there's a strain of thinking in the abortion debate, right, that's based on the sanctity of human life. He's going to develop a pro-life argument that agrees, by and large, with much of what the sanctity of human life theorists would want to say for the pro-life position. But he's going to disagree with how he arrives at the conclusion. He disagrees with their conclusion. So he wants to accept a pro-life conclusion, like the sanctity of human life theorists do, though he wants a moderate one. But he doesn't want to be a sanctity of human life theorist. Doesn't want to commit himself to the sacredness of human life. Again, that concept's too religious for him, ultimately. And he thinks the argument proves too much. So there was a stalemate he thinks is existing. We looked at the pro-life side, the pro-choice side. Here's how that goes. Only persons have the right to life and thus the right not to be killed. That's the foundational claim of the pro-choicers. Guess what? Fetuses don't satisfy this condition, this necessary condition. They're not persons. So they do not enjoy the right to life and don't enjoy the right not to be killed. That's the pro-choice argument, as Marquis understands. At least a traditional version of it. Here's what Marquis says in response. Okay? It ends up proving too little in the case. Why? In this case, it's too narrow. Only persons have the right to life? Well, what about infants? Small children, toddlers, the severely mentally disabled? Don't they have the right to life? Marquis says, of course they do. But strictly speaking, they're not persons. Now, what's going on here is an assumption that persons are beings that can act and be responsible for their acting, be consciously aware of what they're doing sufficiently to be held responsible for what they do. And that's usually the grounds by which pro-choicers would say that fetuses aren't persons. They lack consciousness, sufficient consciousness to be agents in the world, to be responsible for what they do, etc. So it looks like the standard, as Marquis puts it, pro-choice argument ends up being too narrow because it doesn't confer the right to life on enough entities. Infants, small children, etc., etc. So Marquis thinks we need to think about the abortion debate differently. We need to think about what makes it wrong to kill. We need a theory of the wrongness of killing. What makes it wrong to kill a normal adult? What makes it wrong to kill an adult? Set aside the term normal, if you will. What makes it wrong to kill one of us? One of us who's watching, for example, this video. Here's what Marquis says. Thompson was my last video, excuse me. Here's what Marquis says. What makes it wrong to kill one of us is the fact that deprives us of the valuable future that we would have had. That's intuitive, isn't it? What makes it wrong, not in every case, but in the vast majority of them, to kill one of us is the fact that we're going to be deprived of a whole lot of goodness that we would have had were we not killed. It's a deprivation theory of the wrongness of killing. And Marquis says that this view here, this general theory here, doesn't apply just to adults like you and I. It applies also to fetuses, because fetuses are the kinds of entities that, guess what, typically enjoy valuable futures. And when one kills a fetus, one aborts a fetus, one is depriving the fetus of the future goodness, the future value it would have had, it would have experienced. So that line of argument is pretty straightforward. The deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, is true. It accounts for why it's wrong to kill us in normal cases. But guess what? This very general theoretical consideration is going to apply to fetuses as well. So the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, applies also to fetuses, and that's what makes abortion immoral. Now, to defend his argument, Marquis needs to say some things, and he does. He says that the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, has quite a bit going for it, such that we should want to accept it. So he defends that claim, defends his theory here by saying, look, it isn't species chauvinistic, so it has some virtues. Here's one virtue, is it applies to human beings, okay? It applies to other beings that would have valuable futures as well. So there might be other non-human animals that enjoy valuable futures, and the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, would imply that it's wrong to kill them if you deprive them of a valuable future. So this could apply to, say, the animals that we come in contact with regularly. Now, he doesn't make this argument in a significant way, in a developed way in his essay, but he alludes to it. Moreover, if we were to think about or encounter beings that weren't human, but were like us in terms of rationality and all the rest, morality, and we notice that they had valuable futures, well then guess what? Marquis says that the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, would imply that it's wrong to kill them too. So we were thinking about aliens or something like that. Now this is important. The reason why I mention this support is because, keep in mind, Marquis wants a pro-life conclusion without the baggage of the sanctity of human life. Okay? What's the relevant moral property? It's not being human. It's being such that you can have a valuable future. That your life is going to have goodness in it. So his theory isn't species chauvinistic like the sanctity of human life theory is, where we understand species chauvinism as preferring, on unjustified grounds, one species over another. So the theory isn't species chauvinistic. So he's distancing himself from the sanctity of human life theorists to develop his pro-life argument. Okay, another thing that this theory has going for it, the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, has going for it, is that it accounts for why it's wrong to kill the victim. Right? Other theories of killing may not do so. They might appeal to things like the murderer brutalizes himself by making himself vicious, or other theories might have it that it's the loved ones of those who are killed who are going to suffer. No, the deprivation theory says no, there's something bad that happens to the victim that makes it wrong to kill the victim. So these two things at least initially establish reasons for thinking that the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, right, is true and a theory that we should accept. It has intuitiveness going for it, but he wants to provide some reasoning for it. Moreover, he thinks the theory is perfectly consistent with active euthanasia being permissible. That is to say, he thinks that if one has got to a point where there's no more valuable future because the suffering is so great, then it might be okay to provide a lethal injection with the relevant palliative care. Now, this distances himself even further from the sanctity of human life theorists, because according to them, you can passively euthanize someone by removing them from life support, but you can't actively kill someone by giving them a lethal injection to alleviate the suffering. Marquis is one among many philosophers who think that if it's permissible to passively euthanize someone, remove them from life support, then it's also permissible to actively do so for the same reason. It's mercy. It's merciful to do so in many cases. In fact, it can be more merciful because you can end the suffering sooner. So again, pro-life position without the sanctity of human life baggage. Okay, so those are three different lines of support for the theory, the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing. Straightforwardly, fetuses are individuals that tend to have valuable futures. So it looks like DTWK, the deprivation theory, the wrongness of killing, implies that you're doing something wrong to abort fetuses. So that's Marquis's argument. He uses this very general principle. So it's way different from Thompson's line of arguments that we talked about in previous videos, where we look at cases and those help establish the moral view. No, here's a theory about the wrongness of killing. So it applies to fetuses too. So if you want to challenge the argument, challenge the deprivation theory, or say it doesn't apply to fetuses. That's the argument that Marquis gives. And I'm out of time. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, email me, jedickin@syr.edu. Thank you.